AI visibility, how your brand and services will be understood in 2026. So I'm Mike. I'm the head of solutions marketing here at Snappy Kraken. And like we said, we got Angel, our head of advisor content, and Christy, our VP of marketing. Let's start by defining what is AI visibility. So we've got, a nice, succinct definition here. It's your brand being known, trusted, and recommended by AI systems during real buyer conversations. Christy, you've been working on thinking about, writing about AI visibility for a while now. Could you maybe kick us off here by giving us an overview of, expanding on that definition a little bit and just how you're thinking about AI visibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year, really started thinking about it because we started getting referrals from AI. People were finding us from AI, and we would find that like they would perhaps put it in a form or through a sales process. And then, I started to see that signal. So I really started to research it and figure out, okay, well, first of all, how can we track it? And then the secondary piece was, okay, this is happening. Strategically how do we strategically get where we need to be? And then it just turned into this larger concept, a discipline of how do we make sure that our brand is clearly understood and trusted by AI systems. So really started from kind of actually a little bit backwards.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. We noticed people are mentioning AI. It's coming up in sales conversations. We're starting to see it in some of the tracking. And we know, the rise of AI is happening, and our own purchase decisions are starting to be influenced here. I think it would be helpful to, kind of hit on that second point of what's the difference between AI visibility versus AEO versus SEO.
Sure. So I'll take it and then, hand it over to Angel. So I see AI visibility as more of the discipline, and kind of an umbrella process for many different tactics and strategies that you need to employ. So it's really an ongoing practice. And AEO to me is one of the tactics. It's really the content piece, one of the content optimization pieces within AI visibility. So to just reinforce, AI visibility is really the larger discipline, and then AEO fits underneath that.
Yeah, and AEO, just in case, I should have put this on the slide, but in case anybody doesn't know, it stands for answer engine optimization, whereas SEO stands for search engine optimization. Angel, what's your take on this? You've been seeing AI visibility. Obviously, you've been using AI for a long time, and you've been a marketer for a long time. What's your kind of perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean the way I see it and the way we've been discussing it is that this is another channel, right? This is another, whenever we think about how people discover you and learn about you and start building up that relationship with you, even before they've had a chance to speak with you personally, one-on-one, whether it's over the phone, over email, over text, in person, this is another distribution channel. And when distribution channels start building up momentum, this is an inevitable one, right? Like you mentioned this before, Mike. You better start paying attention, and you better ask yourself, how do I adapt to this so that I can leverage it for my business? Because this is a big business process and a big shift, which Christy's going to talk a little bit more about.
Yeah, I think kind of talking about that inevitability is kind of an important piece too. Obviously, ChatGPT is growing massively, as well as a lot of these other AI platforms, Claude, Perplexity. Everyone is using those. Even if you're not using that, though, there's this concept of zero-click searches, right? So somebody just goes into Google and searches the same way they always have, but what they're seeing is actually some AI generated results. I did this actually earlier today, just as an example. I'm sure you guys have seen this. Everybody uses Google for the most part. But in case you haven't, I just typed in who's the best financial advisor for tax planning in Newport, Rhode Island. And there was a couple sponsored results that were the first three things that came up. So I scrolled down slightly. And then the next thing before any of the search results is this pretty comprehensive AI overview that's mentioning specific people in Rhode Island, and summarizing some of kind of what they do, which is really interesting. And I even went and kind of looked at some of these different websites just to see if, like, for example, that Benjamin F. Edwards in Middletown, down here, I thought this tax sensitive investment strategies was a interesting phrase. I was like, oh, maybe that's on their website, but it isn't. It's not right on the homepage of their website. So these things are coming from a lot of different sources, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But a zero-click search is when somebody just comes, they search on Google the way they typically would. All of the results come up, but they don't actually click on any of them because they see this AI overview. So buyers aren't just searching anymore, they're asking, and AI is deciding what to surface, even on Google. Anything to add on this zero-click searches, how you guys are seeing this kind of take form in the market?
I think with zero-click searches, one of the things that's interesting that we talk about a little bit later is like measurement. It's harder. It's interesting to measure because if they're not clicking from either ChatGPT or Perplexity or Google to your site, how do you track that? And I think that is going to be a growing area, and we'll keep learning about that because I think one of the things we didn't mention up front is this like AI is changing rapidly. So we are constantly reading and researching so that we stay up to speed.
Yeah, it's developed, like you said, it's developing rapidly. There's a very interesting comment here. So I just asked if anyone here knows if prospects have found them in their firm via AI, and just had someone reply that a prospect found them via ChatGPT, and another one decided not to use them based off of faulty ChatGPT results. And I think one or two slides down from here, Christy, you'll be able to address that a little bit when you talk about coherence and entity health and all that stuff. So we'll address that, Kelly.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think it's a good point, just kind of the context of AI visibility. I don't know that this term existed before 2025. It really started being used more, late 2025. So this is definitely an emerging field. It's changing fast. But we're starting to see results from it, and that's cool. So we're going to be talking about that. Some of the data I think is really interesting to look at here. We're all kind of experiencing this. We're seeing the shift happen, but the data backs it up as well, right? 89% of B2B buyers have adopted generative AI as one of the top sources of self-guided information in every phase of their buying process. Over half of B2B buyers said generative AI led them to consider more or different vendors while saving them time. And in 2025, 30% of all buyers view Gen AI tools as a meaningful interaction type during the final commit stage of their purchase. So when they're deciding what are they going to actually purchase for what they've researched, compared to just 17% for interacting with product experts. I think it's really interesting that almost double the amount of people trust AI in that final stage versus trusting a product expert, and what that kind of says about how things are moving here. Christy, what's your take on this data, or that specific point of the final stage there?
Well, I in some ways I find it a little scary that we trust AI more than a person. But I also, when we kind of dig into how AI starts to recommend you, it's not it's that's why we call it AI visibility, because it's a discipline. It requires consistency and clarity, and also getting third-party validation. So there is this idea that AI right now is objective. So I think that's interesting. I think in our next slide, we really talk about, like, it's hard to imagine that people aren't going to use it because of how much it can remove cognitive, like when you're doing research, how much it can propel you forward or how much time it saves you. So So I do agree that with this data and that we'll probably see it increase as more and more people adopt it.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing it as objective or as kind of this like impartial third party, and
Yeah.
maybe seeing the product expert as someone who's just, trying to sell you that specific product. Fair enough. So, we're talking about what AI visibility is, kind of setting the landscape here for how things are changing. But when it comes to thinking about how to influence this, right? Like what Angel was talking about, how do we get AI to actually bring us up in these conversations, number one, and then make sure that the AI is actually saying what we want it to say. And Christy came up with this really cool concept that I love of marketing to machines, and this new era of marketing to machines, where almost thinking of the AI as a persona that we're marketing to try and get it to say what we want to say, right? In essence, when AI talks about your firm, what do you want it to say? And it sounds like somebody in the chat, which I haven't looked at that specific comment, but ChatGPT brought up something that wasn't really accurate to their firm. It wasn't what they want to be said, and so it's really important to A, be in the conversation, but B, for it to be accurate, and that's going to come down to this concept of marketing to machines. Christy, this is something you came up with. I think it's a really cool concept. It's a really cool way to think about this. I mean, how did you come up with this, and what are you thinking about in terms of marketing to machines?
Well, it's just kind of going back to last year, when I started, first it's the signal, started to see people come in. And then second, trying to figure out how and why. And I just really got into it. And as a marketer, there's a way we think. And the deeper I got into looking at all the signals that AI uses, I thought, wow, this is really like not just one tactic. It's several different, I call it like 5 dimensions. There's like multiple ways that you need to do it. There are multiple things that you can do. And we'll get into some practical things in a bit that you need to do to be surfaced accurately. And in some ways it mirrors humans. First you need to be known, then you need to be trusted. And so to me, it just sounded like adding another persona. So if we're going to align our solution to somebody, who are they? What do they like? What do they care about? And how do they find out? And so it really kind of surfaced that way for me. And so that was marketing to the machines.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting too how the machines, the AI in this case, unlike a human, which has there's limited amounts of things that a human can pay attention to in certain frames of time, certainly, right? So I might go research something, and if I have an hour, I'm gonna, click on a bunch of different links, go through some reviews, whatever process that is. Whereas an AI, in a blink of an eye, can absorb and consume basically all of the information that there is on the internet, which is then going to filter through to figure out what it thinks is accurate, all these different things. So it's a totally different persona, and we have to think about it in a more comprehensive way.
I like how you bring this up. This makes me, I like to think about, there's that phrase, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So I try to think about, like, here's this new thing that we're seeing. Here's this new evolution. In what ways have we seen this before? And the thing I get reminded of is how every new technology and every new distribution channel that is through technology, people have to learn it. And usually they try to use it according to the previous channel before it. And that's kind of where they get it wrong. So an example of that would be early TV commercials. If you watch the earliest TV commercials, they were basically radio commercials where they would just have a static image. It wouldn't be like, visual, like video or live action. It would just be a static image. And it would just be like, hey, buy Folgers coffee, the kind of coffee that gives you the pep and step in the morning, and they would just list all the benefits. But then that had to evolve in the early days of the websites. And we still see this today. Some people treat their website as just, hey, let's take our print collateral, let's take a brochure, and let's just put this static brochure up on our website. You have to evolve according to the context and the way that the new technology and distribution channel is going to best leverage your communication for consumption.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point. And I'm also I really like the your radio voice there. That was pretty
That's called the transatlantic accent, where it's like you can't place it. There's no region. It's just what they did in the early days of radio, right?
that's great. Um, okay, so marketing to machines. I think it would be helpful now to take a look at, Christy just mentioned this, but this 5 dimensions of AI visibility. Christy, maybe you can walk through this because I think this gives us a concrete way to think about it of all these different elements of approaching AI visibility. And one thing I will say before we dive in here is we are going to get into some very, very practical implementation steps and exact things that you can do to kind of help implement this. So if this feels a little bit overwhelming, all the different things that we're talking about feels like, man, this is a lot to do, we will bring it back down to the basics. But we do want to talk about the depth here, right? And the complexity of it, because there is some complexity to it.
Yeah, so I mean, really kind of to Angel's point, having been in the industry for a while, I have seen a few of these things. And so when I started digging into this, I was like, oh, let me skip that phase where I try to just do SEO or just try to do one thing and really kind of, dig into it. And that's where, again, I started backwards and moved forwards. And at one point I thought, I actually probably need to really truly understand this. And what I realize is there are these 5 things, and I'm sure this list is going to grow and it will change, but really it starts with the entity health, which is really the foundation, and that is, are you recognizable? So for Snappy Kraken, it's like Snappy Kraken's website, and then a consistent message of who we are and what we do. And then it moves into the AEO portion, and you probably also have heard of GEO, but how do I continue to reinforce the story of who we are and what we do? So that's the content piece where you could add FAQs to your homepage, you can do different things, and we can get into that. And then the third part is the trust layer. And I think this is one of a really interesting piece. It's the part where your reviews matter, your awards matter. It's that third party validation that validates what you say. And then the demand signals we kind of talked about earlier. If you're hearing when you talk to a potential client, where did they hear about you from? Or we actually recently implemented some new stuff on our analytics, Google Analytics, so we could see our AI referral. It's not something you can just click. You have to make a change. And if anybody has questions about that, you can email me. I didn't personally do it. I just had somebody do it for me. And then the feedback loop is where you're basically going in and checking how you want to be checking your brand across all the different models. And so are you being represented the way you want to? And then being able to correct that through essentially the content optimization. So those are the 5 that we're really focused on right now.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting thinking about it in this way, and it kind of does get back to the way that AI can absorb everything. And so because it can absorb everything, it needs ways to structure that, to find repetition, right? If there's repetition of this across the website, and then on third-party sites as well, and then those same things are maybe reflected in some of the reviews, it makes that more believable, I guess, to the AI. It makes it more trustworthy. So I think it's a really cool way to think about it. Anything to add on here, Angel?
Tell me what you guys think about this. It's like getting clear. And again, I don't want to step over any other of the following slides, but getting clear on who you are, who you serve, and how you stand out. And I keep on thinking about positioning statements, not in the cheesy way of, melts in your mouth and not in your hands, or give us 15 minutes and you can save 15% or more. You guys know who said that, right? Any takers? Mike, who do you know who said that? 15 minutes can save you 15% or more in car insurance?
Geico.
Yeah, Geico. So there's something there about being really clear and about having that repetition. If it sticks in human minds, but it also can, if you're getting really clear and you're repeating it across the right channels and the right platforms and the right content, the right assets, and third-party people are saying it, AI is going to be like, well, hey, on average, this must be true. This is what I'm going to report back when I'm asked about anything adjacent to this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if it almost, sorry, go ahead, Christy.
Oh, I was gonna say one of the interesting things that I think comes up is the AI is looking for the least risky response. Like they want it essentially is trying to respond back with something that is trustworthy. And that I think is kind of an interesting point. So consistency. So if you're consistent, if you do a press release and it's consistent, if your partner has something about you and it's consistent, then you show up and your visibility and your entity health increases.
That's a really interesting point, and I want to highlight something, that it's not that the AI is this disembodied open source model that lives somewhere, guys. It doesn't want to disappoint the user, the audience, the customer. Why? Because there are companies behind this. There are real companies behind these distribution channels. And if you stop trusting it, you're not going to use the software anymore. And guess what? They're not going to be able to monetize anything. So in the same way that Google had the incentive of giving you the best possible answers so that you trusted it, there was a virtuous cycle and you could come back and keep using it, these tools are the same way. There's a business incentive to not disappoint you with a bogus answer. Now, that's aside from hallucinations, and we might be able to talk about that in a little bit. But again, it doesn't want to disappoint you. That's a really, really interesting point. So because it doesn't want to disappoint the consumer, we got to be really intentional about how we play the game and how we structure our communications and our marketing so that we can show up in the best possible way.
Yeah, I feel like you were kind of hinting at this potentially with what you started saying a minute ago, Angel, but I wonder if it makes specific positioning statements all the more important so that when your ideal clients or the type of people you want to work with are going to ChatGPT, that you're actually coming up in that conversation as like, yes, this person works with, specializes in XYZ. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that rings true or not?
Well, one thought it came up for me is not just specialization, and I think you brought that up earlier, is like if you are servicing people, if your audience is in a certain zip code, making sure that is on your website. If you have a certain niche, then having that on your website and likely in an FAQ, question and answer, because that works really well. But I definitely think that is going to help you get surfaced and it aligns with your story. So like, I think that's also the piece is alignment and that understanding. It makes sense. You don't hop from, I wouldn't say it's just keeping alignment with your core positioning.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Putting thought behind who it is that you serve, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go all the way down the rabbit hole of, their age, what they wear, if they like their coffee black or with cream and sugar. But if you serve tech professionals in the Bay Area, if you serve women-owned businesses and business owners, evaluate their businesses and have some kind of exit strategy, or you're focusing on people who are navigating divorce and you have all these very salient points on how you do that, it's even more important to make sure that you make that clear and that you are marketing to the machine so it knows. On the other end, you should also make sure that you don't have out-of-date information, right? If you've given up on a particular service, on a particular niche, on a particular vocation, you want to make sure that that isn't out there on your website and on all your content. You want to make sure that you have that right upkeep as well so that you can have the proper hygiene with your marketing, so that again, it's being packaged up the way you want it for the machines.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's ways you can kind of reinforce this with what's on your homepage, what's in your FAQs, what's in the content you're creating, and start to kind of direct the AI how to talk about you. So let's talk about some of what that might look like. What are some practical implementation steps that you can take to start implementing AI visibility? And we have this kind of first steps checklist that Chrissy put together. And don't worry about taking notes. We also have a really cool takeaway that's actually an even more comprehensive version of this checklist that we'll send to everybody after the call. We'll also send the replay for this. I saw somebody ask about that in the chat. So you'll get the replay and you'll get this this guide that includes this checklist and a bunch of other resources on how to think about this, how to start implementing it. But let's go through this first steps checklist. Number one is run a quick AI audit of your brand. So a simple way to do that would be use 2 to 3 AI tools, ask it, and then start documenting what it says and what it doesn't say. Are you a part of that conversation, right? Are you in the conversation to begin with? And then secondarily, is it saying what you want it to say? So one way to do that would just be to say, hey, describe your ideal client. Here's my current financial situation. So describe your ideal client's financial situation. And then can you recommend 5 advisors in XYZ area that would be worth talking to? Number 2 is fixing the fundamentals, right? We were just talking about this. Homepage clarity, service pages, bios, FAQs, making sure those are consistent, potentially making sure that they're specific to the type of people that you work with, that they're not outdated. Number 3, publishing or restructuring 3 to 5 answer posts and using common client questions to write these. Christy, this is an interesting one. Can you talk to us how would you approach publish or restructuring existing content to be these answer posts?
Yeah, I think so. It was something we did early on, actually, and it was so on our product and services pages. We just kind of think about what are the so when you write a product page, you write it a certain way, and that's not necessarily the way AI is going to read it. They're going to read it more like, I guess, try to read it more like a human. So it would be like, who is Snappy Kraken? And then you can write exactly who Snappy Kraken is, and then keywords. And then you could go even further, Snappy Kraken services, financial advisors, and I'm in Oregon. So you can really get granular in those FAQs in a way, and more human than you can really in your product content or your service content or anywhere on your website. So I would go through each page, and we actually did this. We added FAQs to almost all of our pages, which also benefit humans, because you might not get what you need from our product page. You might not think, oh, I don't know if this is right for me. And then you could go. So it actually serves 2 purposes. It makes it really easy for humans to read as well. Mike, I'm not sure I answered the question directly.
No, I think that, yeah, it's an interesting way to think about kind of taking your existing content, adding these FAQs to it, almost as like a expanded TLDR at the end of it. That's kind of maybe going beyond even a TLDR, right? Which too long didn't read, which is just kind of summarizing it, but starting to answer some of the questions people might have. And it might, I mean, as you're going through that, it almost strikes me like how simple it is of like, who do you work with? What area do you work in? Different things like that. But it almost feels like you're trying to make it easier for the AI, in a sense of like, when people are asking questions, here's some answers that you can give, and making sure that they're consistent across all of these pages.
And that's definitely like when we were talking about the content optimization piece and AEO versus GEO. That is, the FAQs are definitely an AEO tactic where the AI can lift content from your site and shift it over.
Yeah. What were you about to say, Andrew?
Yeah, I want to add just a little bit a practical exercise for number 3, because we tell advisors, firm owners, and marketing people like, hey, find common client questions. And sometimes if you're really close to what you do, you're going to have that curse of knowledge. So if you are in charge of writing your own FAQs, you might write it for an audience that is made up of people like yourself. So let's talk about where to mine areas for questions that are in the client format. Some of those areas are in emails, that any questions you've gotten in emails. It could be form submissions that you've gotten on your website. A lot of advisors are using meeting notes and meeting recorders. I see a few note takers in our audience today. So what's great about these note takers is that they have a little a chat modal in the software. So after a prospect call or even a client call, you can just say, hey, I'm looking to make an FAQ page on my website. Can you list out some of the common questions that this person asked that I could potentially use on my own website? Now, if you take a number of different transcripts, you can say, look for the common threads among the client questions that I get and give me a list of potential FAQs that I could address on my website. And that's the beauty of a lot of these tools, is that it will format it for you. It'll find those trends. It'll find that average. It'll find the themes, and it'll just serve it up to you on a platter that you can then use on your website to better serve your market and to better market to the machines.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think you could also take the page, take all the content from your website, dump it into ChatGPT and say, imagine that you are my ideal client. Describe that. What are the top 20 questions that you would have after reading this, and then go through, and they may not all be perfect questions, but you're definitely going to get a few really good ones that you can add in, and then start answering.
Even what have I missed, right? What is something that may not be answered on this page that would be really important for someone to decide on whether or not they're going to work with me? And it doesn't mean you're going to get the perfect answer, but it helps to ask. You could surface up insight that you could end up using.
I think one of the things that's kind of fun about this versus like SEO. SEO, you have to write like in a way that's not human. You need to cram in a bunch of keywords, and I always think sometimes when I read SEO written stuff, I kind of cringe because it's not like how a human would talk. Whereas this is actually really trying to get you to humanize it, so for clarity and consistency. So it is a little bit more fun.
It's really easy to tell, right? When you read the SEO article, like let's say you're looking for a speaker system for your home, Christy, and it's just like, oh yeah, the best speaker equipment to use in Portland, Oregon involves that. And these are great. This is high fidelity for people in Portland, Oregon, who really care about, who are audiophiles. And you're like, oh, give me a break.
Yeah.
Well,
the word repetition.
Yeah.
It made me think about one other thing we haven't really touched on is to Angel's point is the concept of cluster blogs. And we're giving out a handout after this, and it gives some examples. But a cluster blog, actually, cluster blogs help you get ranked for more of the not ranked, but get more the GEO side, which is generative responses. You become part of a generative response, not just a like what you would get with a FAQ. So if somebody asks a specific thing, you might be considered a thought leader and get recommended. And that happens through cluster blogs, and just separating how blogs used to be written with SEO versus AEO. Again, it's way more for me, I guess, maybe being a nerd, writing blogs for AEO versus SEO.
Yeah. Marketing nerds rejoice. Writing for AEO is a lot more fun than writing for SEO. Cool. Yeah, I think that as we were talking before, actually, about restructuring homepages, trying to get out who you work with in terms of ideal clients, thinking about how to apply a cluster blog to that would be a really great way to reinforce it. And you could even start bringing up like kind of specific situations in that. So there'll be a lot more on that.
Hey, real quick on that. I mean, this is I've seen this happen as I do research for our own content. So I pick a topic, land on a theme. I have the brief. I'm putting together a hit list of for a writer to take care of. And throughout the course of my research, I see all these facts brought up, and it'll cite those sources, and I'll see different research companies. I'll see different firms like investment firms, financial advisors. I'm like, oh wow, these people have put in the work to come up in these answers, to be thought leaders, and to be seen as someone worthy of citing when it comes to bringing up all these answers. So I'm starting to see this more and more as I do research.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, so let's just hit the last two on this list. Number 4, add credibility reinforcement. So reviews, case studies, partner mentions, awards, citations. This is that third party credibility. And then number 5 is just setting a lightweight feedback loop. So quarterly recheck and refresh. I mean, this could also be as simple as just asking your clients or asking prospects when they're booking a call with you. You get in that meeting and just saying, hey, how did you hear about me? And just kind of making a note when AI comes up in those conversations to see how often that's happening. And then obviously kind of quarterly going back in and checking the AI tools, repeating number 1, running that quick AI audit.
Hey, and quick question, Christy, Mike, if you guys were running a firm and someone told you, I found out about you through AI, would you ask them what they typed in? Would you ask them, can you export the whole conversation and share it with me? Like what is your gut? What would your gut lead you to ask for?
Well, before we answer this, just remember you're asking 2 marketing nerds about what
Yeah.
you would do. It's not necessarily recommended what you should do. But yeah, I would definitely be asking follow-up questions. Exporting the conversation would be ideal. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
gonna happen, but what about you, Christy?
No, probably not. Probably not.
I think, yeah, I would want to ask for the exported, but I would refrain and ask as much as I could. But yeah, no, I would definitely like to see the whole chain.
Yeah, before you know it, your whole call turns into just a conversation about AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we should talk
I
about your
will
finances too.
say for our audience though, I do listen to some of our gong calls and it comes up a lot and I don't know if salespeople care as much, to be honest, because they'll say, "Oh, I found out about you through AI," and then they move on. So, but it is nice to hear those calls and start collecting that data as well.
Yeah, it's happening more and more. Okay, so first steps checklist. Like we said, you are going to get an expanded version of this in the guide. And that guide will also include some of these best practices and common challenges. But some of the best practices, write and structure your content so it can be reused as answers. We've been talking about that. We've also been talking about this, but making sure that your positioning is consistent across all of your content. And especially like Angel said, if you have, maybe some outdated positioning, making sure that's not there anymore. And building these credibility signals that AI can corroborate. So again, the consistency is one of those, some of the third-party validation, super important. Some of the common challenges, inconsistent descriptions of who you serve and what you do, right? So this is the opposite of that best practice. If there is some inconsistency here, right? Your homepage says one thing, but a service page says another, and maybe you have an FAQ that is slightly different. That's going to show up. Content that's well written, but not answerable or structured. Christy, could you expand on this one a little bit? What would how would you notice this? You have content that's well written, but it's not answerable or structured.
That's a good question. Do you mean just on a general homepage?
Yeah, or in a blog. I mean, I guess how would you what does it mean to have a piece of content that's well written? Meaning like somebody might enjoy reading it, but it's not answerable or structured in a way that's going to appeal to AI.
Well, I think it goes back to you can write well-written content, but if it doesn't actually reinforce your value or what you're offering or delivering, so you could write something really nice, but if it has nothing to do with the services you offer, then it's not going to add to your credibility. It will confuse the AI, to be honest. So I think if you for example, an easy way to do is go back through your website, just make sure everything really ties back to the value you're delivering to your clients.
Yeah.
And structured meaning like a hierarchy. Like you don't start with the most niche thing at the bottom, maybe, and maybe you do, but if you step outside and think about what you do, what is that hierarchy? You're a financial advisor, you practice in this region, and you focus on these types.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So structured meaning that the information is presented in a hierarchy that makes sense. It's easy for the AI to understand. Which, to be honest, kind of go back to what we were talking about before. It's also going to make it easier for humans to understand.
Yes. I mean,
It's
if
kind
like, so our site is an example for you guys. Like if we started with integrations first, it wouldn't make sense. But we start with, what we deliver. And then at a certain point, oh, we integrate with Wealthbox. We integrate with Orion. Like then it makes sense. But if the structure is the wrong way, it won't make sense to the human or the machine.
of and then the last two, not enough third-party proof in places that AI trusts, and no process for monitoring how AI describes you. So it's just happening. You're not aware of it. You're not keeping track of it. Anything else to add to this, Angel or Christy?
We've seen a lot of people get this wrong. Like just going back to structure and being answerable. Your communication is an argument, right? You're making a statement, you're pleading a case, and you don't want the person consuming it, whether it's a person or a machine, to get lost. So it can't be one big block. And this is why strategy and intention, starting off with those, that's why it matters in the first place. Not, hey, I'm just going to go act and put a bunch of isolated pieces of content out there. It's how does everything connect? What is the right argument? What is the right order of operations? And you can even look at this presentation as an example of that, Mike and Christy. I mean, you started off with a statement, a general statement of what we were going to cover, followed by the general groupings of what we were going to do. And then you went into the nested versions of each of those different groupings. You're stating your argument, and then you're unpacking it in an organized, intentional way. That didn't happen by accident. You put thought into that at the very beginning, and then you iterate it over time. It's the same way. That does not change with marketing. Having that intention, knowing your objective, knowing who is this for, why does it matter, why do they even care, and how am I going to stand out? That doesn't change. You need to answer those things and put thought into that.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
point. Okay. So let's say, you're listening to this. You listen to us talk about AI visibility, about AEO. If you want some help building out foundations for, your own AI visibility, I'm just going to tell you a little bit. We'll spend, maybe 2 minutes on this AI visibility optimization package, which is something that we are implementing for clients here at Snappy Kraken. And it really is the foundational steps, right? All the different things that we just went through. This is the foundation for getting in those conversations and starting to make sure that AI is saying what you want it to say. And it's two-pronged. It's seeing on SEO and AEO. So I'm not going to go too deep into any of these things. If you want a real deep dive of what this is, I highly recommend scheduling a demo and chatting with our team. They can walk you through it. But it includes LLM optimized website architecture, which is, again, talking about the homepage, the service page, all of these different pages, making sure that they are consistent, that they're talking to your clients, your ideal clients. Content pillar and support hub creation, which is like the cluster blog that we were talking about. Schema markup and structured data, technical SEO and performance optimization, and then indexability and crawl review. It includes a 6-month strategic review, and then some optional add-ons for further optimization. So this would be a really good way to kind of jumpstart your way into this and make sure that you have your foundation set. If you do want to do that, oh yeah, and we have some really cool data on this as well. I almost forgot. So this is comparing Snappy Kraken websites without any of this implemented compared to having this implemented, and just the advantage that you get from that, right? In increased website traffic. So average monthly new visitors, 93.9% advantage, average monthly sessions, 93.4% advantage, and average monthly page views, 74% advantage. So it is helping drive more traffic into your website. That traffic turns into leads, turns into booked calls, and turns into clients. So if you would like some help with this, or you want to learn more about this, or you just want to learn more about Snappy Kraken, you can use your phone, book a demo, have a chat with our team. They'll walk you through what it looks like and what it might look like to implement that. So I'll leave this up if you do want to book a call, but let's see if we have any questions here.
I did see one question. I want to see what you folks have to add to this, and it's about third parties and third party tools, publications, or websites that AI would trust. And I don't know if that's if in your perspective, if that's the best possible framing, or is it more along the lines of what are some third party signals or other areas where there's validation, corroboration on my website and what I'm saying about myself, my LinkedIn, my social media, on my bylines, on press releases, and what I'm saying about myself and who I serve, and then what other, websites are saying about me. Anything to add, or any additional color to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting thinking about third-party tools. I think, like you said, it could be the consistency, like really any third party reinforcing what you've said could be considered like that would be trustworthy. But there's probably some standout ones like Yelp reviews, Google reviews, PR, like press releases from your reputable sources, things like that, I think are going to have maybe be weighted a little bit heavier. What do you think, Christy?
Yeah, I agree. I think awards. I think it's also going to matter how you position them on your site, because if it's just an image somewhere, you might want to put it on your site and on your website with an explanation so that it gets picked up. And I think some of this is kind of testing. And what I mean by that is we have case studies on our website, but they're in PDF. And my assumption is that they're not going to get picked up, but those could be third party validation. That could be third party validation. So we're working on that, like changing it over so that the AI can read it. So I think there's the different areas, Yelp reviews, like Mike suggested. PR is a really I've been reading that PR is, a real significant and in the coming years when it comes to AI, because of not just the press release that gets put over the wire, but also if you get mentioned in press, that's a really big one, or in the media.
Especially when they mention you in the press and then they follow that up with who you are, what you do, what your specialty is. So if you've been really thoughtful about that and providing journalists, providing interviewers, if you're on podcast interviews with all the show notes that are being generated and the transcripts, if you can get those mentions in there from the stuff that I've read. Again, this is still a very early field, right, guys? From a lot of the stuff that I've read, as these things get transcribed and shared and disseminated and crawled and indexed even more, those are additional signals. So the more consistent you could be, the more standardized you could be, and the more specific and specialized you could be, that's only going to compound as like additional signals that come from third parties, not just your own homepage.
Yeah, that's a good point. You think about the podcasts, webinars you do, and it could even be like if you do a webinar, you do a podcast with someone else, if they haven't transcribed it, just kind of asking them below that page where they're sharing it to put your bio. Even that alone is going to be kind of reinforcing some of this thing. Your bio, who you are, who you work with. That's another way to kind of add that in there if it isn't being done already.
I'll have to share with you guys one of the tools that I have. There's a tool called Pod Chaser where you track keywords, names, company names for mentions of your company in podcasts. So I always want to keep track, like, okay, what are there's like podcasts, and it's not just podcasts that are interviewing Robert or another member of our team. It might just be a marketing for advisors podcast. And if they just happen to mention Snappy Kraken, I'll get a notification with the transcript and a link to the podcast just so I can see like, oh, did they get it right? Did they describe us in the right way when they mentioned us on their podcast?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea. That's cool. That's a cool tool. Alrighty. Well, I think that is it for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Angel and Christy, for sharing your knowledge and expertise, being a part of the conversation. Yeah, we will see you soon for the next office hours, which we'll be sending out information, and we hope to see you there.